granddad, great-granddad, brother, Joe Dexter Diffie, was one of a kind. I think you know that already, but once you see this movie, you will better understand what I mean. He was the most unique and memorable storyteller this family will ever know. We have Donanita to thank for preserving the words you hear Dad say in this movie. If watching it makes you feel like you're right there in it, it's probably because you are. Forgive us for any unintended omissions. We just used what we had. The songs you hear in this movie were selected because of their significance. The movie goes fast, so listen closely so you won't miss any of the words. This movie will make you smile, laugh, even tear up at times, but it's not intended to be a sad movie. In fact, most of you will find it quite amusing. Some of you may find it, the word comes to mind, powerful. And a select few of you may find this the most interesting, if not most entertaining hour you've ever spent.
What are you doing, Priscilla?
Oh, I'm just filming.
Videotapes, they're for the next day. And if you don't watch them the next day, they never get watched.
You don't care.
They just sit there and you look at them. If they got writing on them, you don't ever look at them or don't ever mess with them. Well, stacks and stacks of those that nobody ever looks at. The important part is taking it, not ever looking at it. Just knowing you got them if you ever want to look at them. I'll tell Floss, I say, is this going to go on our collection that we never look at? Yeah, it does. It is. He wants me to shut up about it.
Darling, that's enough now. Only take it when I'm doing something cute.
Do you remember? Will you recall? Let's go back together now, relive it all. Do you remember old Mama's itsy bitsy puppy doll? And the night she finally came home when we thought she was lost, going to the movies every Friday night. We'd come telling ghost stories when we turned out the lights. Mama would sing to us and tuck us into bed, and Daddy would remember all the things she said. A snake, a snake, a snake is crawling under my vine. Daddy, help me before he bites. Teacher, teacher, tell me, are the pencils all the same? Does everybody's pencil have my name? Do you remember? Will you recall? Let's go back together now, relive it all. Do you remember Mama making those bright fires, and when we all played music every Saturday night, picking blackberries and swimming in the creek? And I was always it when we'd play hide and seek, washing the dishes after supper every day. And Daddy would remember
go sit back there. Daddy, 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 I sold your watch today. A big boy just gave me $2 in pay. Do you remember? Will you recall? Let's go back together now, relive it all. Do you remember basketball and the games we played, and the fun we all had in our high school days, leaving home, marrying, and when the babies came? Sometimes when I think back, it seems like yesterday, but our journey's not over. We've got lots of memories to make. You can bet Dad will remember all the things we say. Uncle Sam, come over here and liken on me. Do you remember those happy memories?
Now, we understand that JD has been practicing a new magical trick. All right, JD, we're all waiting. Show it to us. Wow, where did he go? He disappeared. Can he do it? Can he come back? JD, come back. There he is. He's back.
Dad, can you sing us some songs and tell us about the good old days before you leave again?
Princess may not be one of your favorite songs, but to show you how much I think of you, I'll do this for you. I grew up a dreaming, being a cowboy, loving cowboy ways, serving the lives of my high-riding heroes, turned my childhood days. Well, I learned all the rules, the modern day drifter. Don't you hold on to nothing that's what you need from the ladies and even what's the word to that country song. Always been cowboy, still are it seems, sadly in search of one stepping back to himself in that slow moving dream. Now cowboys are special, well on brand the misery from being alone too long. To die in the arms of a nightmare, knowing well the best days are gone. Looking up pickers, sit of my pen, I let the days of my youth fade away. Oh, I said old faded memories with no one and no place to stay. Heroes have always been cowboys, still are it seems, sadly in search, one stepping back of himself in this slow moving dream. Kids, you know the Lord said to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Well, I guess I've done my part because I got so many great grandkids that don't even know their ages nor their name. Now I'll have to tell you about my firstborn grandson. Of course, I was pretty proud of him. I was pretty young. I think he was born in '59. He was riding, of course, he was older and he was riding with his dad. And George Jones was singing or somebody, you know. And he was pretty good age then and could sing pretty good. And somebody said, well, there'd be nobody as great as George Jones. Little Joe, I don't know how old he was, but he said, well, Says, I think I will be able to. So since then, he's made a pretty good mark in the world as a singer.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. And Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, where the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay? Stand beside each other come what may? Was a promise really something people kept, not just something they would say? Did families really bow their heads to pray? Did daddies really never go away? Whoa, whoa, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days.
The first thing I remember about him, Joe and I were fixing fence up in the big pasture. We had little Joe with us. He was about 3 years old, but he could always talk pretty plain. You could hear him. We had him sitting up straddling the saddle and leading the horse, and we was fixing fence. And directly he says, I want to be a cowboy. I want to be a cowboy. So we thought that was pretty cute, and he rode on down a little way, and he said, oh, Nickawatt, oh, Nickawatt, oh, Nickawatt. I was up at Joe's house. He lived up at Velma at the time. And Floss was cooking supper, and little Joe was sitting in his high chair, and he had a spoon in his hand. He was a-beating on that tray and a-hollering, you know, and Floss, she'd turn back and tell him he's going to have his cereal ready in a few minutes. So finally she got his cereal ready, and when she did, why, he filled his little belly about half full, and then when he got kind of about halfway satisfied, he turned around in that high chair and looked over at me, says, ooh, hungry, Grandpa?
Bashful little Joe Logan Diffie, Joey, born in 1958, grew up to belt out the hits on the big stage and to become a dutiful and doting dad.
There ain't nothing special about the place where I was raised. Just a picture show, a Dairy Queen, and Friday football games. A river where we used to swim on carefree summer days. And a water tower that we all climbed and proudly wrote our names. I gave my heart to Jesus there when I was just 13. I remember Mama crying as the choir began to sing. The congregation stood up and the preacher shook my hand. So many miles and years ago, back in the promised land. How I got so far away, I'll never understand. From those streets of gold that I call home, back in the promised land.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you about Miss Carla. I used to carry her around, and she thought that all the cattle in the world belonged to her grandpa. She didn't call me her grandpa. She called me my pa. So we was going down the road, and I was feeding cattle, and she was riding along with me, you know. She looked out the window and pointed to the back, says, "My pa says you didn't feed them cattles."
my pa. Tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. My pa, take me back to yesterday, where the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other come what may? Were promises something people kept, not something they would say and then forget? Did families really bow their heads to pray? Did daddies really never go away? Oh, my pa, tell me about the good old days.
We was going along by an old house up here one time, and we looked over there, and I said, well, I said, that's an old house. I said, Jesus Christ must have been born there. Oh, yeah, she says, Jesus Christ says, he cries because he has to walk. He ain't got no bicycle.
This is Carla Strickland again, and I'm going to sing Build me a castle 40 feet high, so I can see it when I ride by. Thank you.
Cute little Carla Kathleen Strickland, born in 1959, grew up to march to the beat of a different drummer and to become a liberated and loving mom.
So now, I'm going to tell you about my oldest granddaughter, Meg. I babysitted all my kids, all my grandkids.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay and stand beside each other come what may? Was a promise really something people kept, not just something they would say and then forget? Did families really bow their heads and pray? Did daddies really never go away? Oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days.
And so Meg, she rode in front of me. We was on Old Tony, and I was checking cows that I'd moved from one pasture to another. And we rode over in section 10. When we did, I set Meg on the ground, and I was calling cattle, and directly one of them answered. And I said, "Did you hear that cow, Meg?" "Uh-huh, Grandpa." Says, "What do she say?" Says, "What do she say?"
Modest little Margaret Laverna Diffie, Meg, Born in 1960, grew up to be a serious but stylish attorney at law, a lovable counsel to her brother, and big boss of her dad.
Grandpa, everything is changing fast. We call it progress, but I just don't know. And Grandpa, let's wander back into the past and paint me a picture of long ago. Did lovers really fall in love to stay and stand beside each other, come what may? Was a promise really something people kept, not just something they would say?
Now I better tell you about Mr. Jerry Don.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may? A promise really something people would get, not just something they would say and then forget. Did families really bow their heads to pray? Daddies really never go away. Oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days.
There may be so much about the boy that I can't tell. I guess I can't. Because one of the best-hearted people that I've ever seen in life is Jerry Don. And he thinks more of his grandpa than he does of anything in the world, as exceptions of his mom and dad, of course, which he's supposed to. But the boy has helped me, and he will help me do anything under the sun. It doesn't make any difference what time of day or night it is. He's there. And he's got the straightest, honestest mind of anybody that I've ever seen.
Cheerful little Jerry Don Plumley, born in 1960, grew up to follow in his grandpa's footsteps in the oil field and to make music with his mom.
Who's lost the love of this child? She's dealt me heartaches and borne me furrows, and lips that have forgotten how to smile.
Now I'm going to have to tell you about Mr. Jeff. Well, they lived in that little house right there close to us. And I drove up there one evening, and there was a big 18-wheeler just pulled up to a dead stop. And Jeff was sitting there in a diaper right in the middle of the road playing with a spoon in the dirt. And that truck driver got out and said, "Boy," says, "I just barely saw him." I picked Jeff up, took him out of the road, and the truck driver went on.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, where the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay? Stand beside each other, come what may? Was a promise really something people kept, not just something they would say? Did families really bow their heads to pray? Did daddies really never go away? Whoa, whoa, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days.
Joe was doing something there along with the side of him. And Jeff says, Joe says, Uncle Joe says, "Did you ever see a bug with red stripes and green stripes?" Joe said, "No." Well, he says, I have. Here's one right here.
Quiet little Jeffrey Dwayne Strickland, Jeff, born in 1961, grew up to be a meek, straight-laced CPA and a near semi-golf pro.
This is Jeff Strickland. I'm 5 years old and I want to sing "Let Me Tell You About the Birds and the Bees." Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above and the thing called love. When I look into your big brown eyes, it's so very plain to see what you need to know, the facts of life, starting from A to Z.
When we kiss, my heart's on fire, burning with a strange desire.
So they were talking about Carla and Jeff was talking about a little grasshopper or something there that they looked at, you know. And Carla says, "That's a hoppergrass." Jeff says, "That's not a hoppergrass." He says, "That's a crooked." Now I'll tell you about Pumpkin. She was riding with us one time. We had no air conditioner in this about a 61 model truck. And boy, it was a hot day, and she was riding along there, you know. And she looked down on the dashboard, and she's, and so we finally figured out that she's trying to tell us to turn the air conditioner on.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may. Is a promise really something people kept, not just something they would say? Families really bow their heads to pray, daddies really never go away. Whoa, whoa, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days.
Pumpkin was riding with me and her grandmother, and she's standing up in the back seat, and we were all talking, talking cattle and dogs and one thing and another. And Pumpkin, she kept saying, "Grandma, Grandma, Grandma." Of course, Grandma was hearing her, but she was busy talking. So in a little bit, while Grandma turned around and says, "What is it, Pumpkin?" So she had kind of forgot, and she dropped her head a little bit and twisted around back and forth. And says, "What is it, Pumpkin?" Pumpkin says, I'm a finding out."
Precious little Priscilla Dawn Plumley, Pumpkin, born in 1961, grew up to be a cool and collected comptroller, proficient with ponies, and a mellow mama.
In the joyous days of childhood, oft they spoke of wondrous love, pointed to the dying Savior. Now they dwell with him above. Will the circle be unbroken?
Well, okay, now I'll tell you about my youngest first granddaughter, Miss Monica.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. And Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, where the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may? The promise really something people kept, and not just something they would say. Did families really bow their heads to pray? Did daddies really never go away? Whoa, whoa, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days.
She was always a mama's girl, and I could never pick her up because she'd turn around and she'd run to mama. But then after she got to be a young lady, and she was 12, 13 years old, why, the thing that I remember about her, I looked over at her and she looked just like her grandmother to me. And I reached over and pulled her curls a little bit and told her that she looked like her grandmother. And she tells me then later on in life that was one of the greatest compliments that she ever had. And now she's turned into a songwriter and really a great person.
Adorable little Monica LaVaughn Diffie, born in 1961, grew up to be a relentless real estate mogul and a sublimely soulful singer.
These are the best years of our lives, as our hearts and minds renew in the halls of Franklin's pride. We're the owls of dear old view. We have come to learn, we have come to grow, we have come to let our spirit show, and we proudly sing when the world asks who. We're the owls of dear old view. We're the owls of dear old view. My daddy was a good-hearted, hard-working, old-field man. Yeah, my daddy raised 3 kids, and he did the best he could. He made mistakes, but that we could understand, 'cause he gave us all his love, and that's what really counted. Yeah, my daddy was a good-hearted, hard-working, old-field man. Yeah, my daddy was a good-hearted, hard-working, old-field man.
Well, you mean if I had time I could tell about Donita? No, there's really too much to say about her, because she's the least important one of the bunch. Now, when she was born, why, her granddad, which is my dad, asked me her name, and I told him it's Donita. He says, "Well, that's a good name for her. Don't need her." So since then we've called her Don't Need Her. But she was always an actress, even back when she was a little bitty kid.
Hey, man! Are you taking my picture? I can't see it. Oh, you're not taking my picture, are you? You need to come over here and tell me about being cheap and easy.
She'd pick up all kinds of pieces of paper, and she'd read on them what wasn't even there. So we were working on an irrigation pump one time, and there was a tag on it, and I heard her, she was sitting there reading that tag, which wasn't, she couldn't read it, but she's sitting there reading it anyhow. And it says, we was having trouble with the pump, and she read on that tag and says, "Take this old pump back and get one at will work." So they got done with my water well, and they was leaving with the rig one morning, and the rig was driving in front of the house, and she run from one window to another and says, "You better bring my daddy's water well back here. Says, if you don't, I'll get me a atomic bomb and blow you all to pieces." Well, I bought her a little horse, and we gave her a name. Prontona is supposed to be the name of a gelding, but this was a little mare, but we gave her the name Prontona anyhow. And the horse was half Mustang and half Arabian, and it took months to break the horse. But they became as good friends as there was. So then later on in life, me and Mama both was gone, and we came home, and Donita had one little dress hanging on a hanger, and she was straddling old Prontona and riding up through there, and boy, she was mad at Priscilla and Joe or somebody. Now I stopped and asked her what she's going to do. She says, "I'm leaving home." She had one dress hanging on a hanger. She was really taking off.
My sister Donanita is a remarkable person. She's far more than a phenomenal legal secretary, an expert horsewoman, a gifted singer and entertainer, and a great mom and wife. Like Dad, she's deeply emotional and tender-hearted and a tireless worker. Like Mom, she's focused, artistic, and a deep thinker. Like Joe, she has an infectious and distinctive laugh. Like no one else, she can literally light up a room with her personality, vivacity, charm, and charisma. Yeah, Grandpa called her "don't need her." He was only teasing. The truth is that Donanita will drop whatever she's doing and come help you when you are in need. I'm here to tell you, we do need her. Best sister on earth. I love you, Donanita.
I've lived my life in vain. Every dream has only brought me pain. All my life I've always been so blue. Born to lose, and now I'm losing you. Born to lose, and now I'm losing you.
They asked me how I knew my dad's love was true. Oh, everything he did since I was a kid was what good daddies do. Today, though Dad is gone away, I'm never without his love. Now, laughing friends confide, tears they cannot hide. Oh, smile and say, when a man like my dad dies, tears get in my eyes. Tears get in my eyes.
Priscilla? Why, she's not important enough to even remember anything about. The only thing of it is, when she was a little bitty girl, wasn't walking, wasn't talking, her arms would hang out the top of the crib. And I asked Dr. Young what to do about it, and he says, rub them. And so I'd get her out of the crib, and I'd rub her arms for hours at a time, and the circulation would finally come back into her. Now that's one thing I remember about Priscilla. But she's the most considerate person and the most caring person that I've ever known. You want me to tell about those crocheted dresses? I remember I was milking one morning, and I run a dairy, and I heard Priscilla hollering and screaming. And I run down there about a couple of 100 yards, and she had her bicycle sitting on her rattlesnake. I picked her up, of course, and killed the rattlesnake, but she knew enough not to move because the snake would bite her. So then that Christmas, we bought them a bunch of Christmas presents, and they were opening them Christmas morning. Priscilla looked at these little old 10, 15-cent jewelry, necklaces and beads and one thing and another. She opened up that package, says, "Oh," says, "beautiful jewelry." So then later, when she got to be a young lady, why, she was wanting her mother to buy her a dress for a school or something, you know, and her mother told her, says, "Now, we don't have the money." "Oh," she says, "all you got to do is sell a calf." That'd fix things up. Let me tell you about my sister Priscilla. Right off the top, she had a great sense of humor. She was a sparkling personality, very bubbly. At least she laughs at everything I say. No one I know in this world has more energy than Priscilla. She has jumps up every day and does her tennis and her bicycling. I'm extremely proud of all the things that Priscilla has accomplished in her life in the field of education. She gained a doctorate. But I also am extremely proud of her generous spirit. She's done a lot of things in her life that's proved that to me. Priscilla can convince you of anything and inspire you to do most anything she wants you to do, which makes her a great leader. She's always been as good a sister as you could possibly have, and for that I've always loved her. Tell about my son, Joe. Then the music teacher in Seminole told me, said, "Now you better do something with this boy." Says he's got all kinds of music talent. Joe learned to play the piano, the guitar, and the whole thing by himself.
This song reminds me of the strong and eternal love that my dad had for his brothers. Once I rode an orphan train, and my brother did the same. They split us up at Santee. I was 5 and James was 3. He got taken by some pair, but for me they could not care. We were brave and did not cry when they made us say goodbye. That was the last I saw of him, for a family took me in. But I swore I'd run away and find my brother James someday.
About 4 or 5 months from then, we had a big water tower about a mile from the house, and we pumped water in it and the water siphoned down to the house.
Yeah.
Well, I was over there fixing me a sign to show how much water was in it without having to climb it. Mm-hmm. Well, I climbed up the ladder, and the tower was 90 feet high. I looked down, and Joe started to climb the ladder, and I said, "Now, son, don't climb this ladder." So I didn't pay much attention. Next 30 or 40 minutes, I worked at it, and I started back down the tower, and there he was, 80 foot in the air. Across from me, he had climbed a 4-inch pipe that was one of the legs of the tower. He had climbed that pipe up 80 feet high. There wasn't any way for me to get over there to him because it was 30 feet across that tower. It scared me to death. I said, "Joe," I wanted to be real calm. I said, "Joe, we got to go home and eat." I said, "Can you go back down?" He says, "Yeah, I can, Diddy." So I said, "Now be real careful when you slide around them pipe." And that little feller slid back down that 80 feet. But he didn't want to climb that ladder because I told him not to, but I didn't tell him not to climb the leg. But anyhow, Joe, I loaned Joe my watch, about a $20 watch, which was an expensive watch back in 48 or 47.
Yeah.
I told him he could take the watch and take it to school. About a $20 watch. So that evening when he got off the bus, he come in big and proud. Boy, he says, Daddy, he says, here's $2. Says, I sold you watch. And I just barely made it to the bus when they was pulling off, and this big old 16, 17-year-old kid, I says, you give me back my watch, here's your $2.
You know, one of the things that I love about my brother Joe, he has a great sense of humor. I guarantee you, if you're around him 5 minutes, he'll have told you a joke. We bought Jerry a bass one time, and Joe kept us up all night learning how to play that bass. And I'll bet Joe's the only person in America who has read the entire manual on Windows for the computer. But Joe also has a very deep, sensitive side. Now, he may not show it to you, but I know that he does have. And if you're a member of his family, you know it too. And he cares very deeply about all of his family. That's why he's such a great dad and a great brother, a great husband, was a great son. And when I ask him to help me with music or accompany me on the guitar, he's always there and ready to help me. So I think I truly have the greatest brother in the world. And one thing about it, I wouldn't be here today to say these things had he not rescued me from that oncoming car when I was just a toddler. Thanks, Joe. I love you.
My whole life long. Now I roam from town to town, but there's no orphan lost and found. Sometimes I dream a pleasant sight, my brother James and I unite, remembering our last goodbye. No longer brave, we sit and cry. I hope he lived a life of ease and always find the gentle breeze. May he sit upon a throne, may he never sleep alone.
Chris, I'm talking to you. These two fellas met, you know. One of them says, well, says, I'll meet you down to Pig Pen. Says, you keep your hat on so I'll know you. Other says, well, all right. Says, what time you gonna be there? Says, oh, I don't know. Says, well, if I get there first, I'll make a mark. Says, if you get there first, you rub it out. Another little poem, Press. As I was walking up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I sure wished he'd go away. May God protect and guide you, leave you not alone. Bring back my wandering cowboy back to his native home. Well, okay, Riley, that's one that me and you heard my dad did, no telling how many years ago. Not exactly Ernest Tubbs, of course. Might even be better. But to me, you're as fair as you were, Maggie, when you and I were young. Okay, my dad did that in about 1930 for people on the front porch in East Texas, time and time again. And there was 15 or 20 people sitting on our front porch. He couldn't play an instrument, but he didn't have to have an instrument. He had one in his vocal cords.
Dad, I know you gotta go, but how about singing us one more song?
Chris, I guess you're supposed to do that for your sweetheart, but you're one of my favorite sweethearts, so I guess it's all right to do it for you. Okay, this is for the family.
When we
JD, come back. Videotape, they're for the next day. And if you don't watch them the next day, they never get watched.
You don't care.
Lovers really fall in love today. Stand beside each other comfortably. Something they would say. Families really bow their heads today. Daddies really never go away. Tell me about the good old days. Then paint me the picture. Lovers really fall in love today. Stand beside each other comfortably. Something they would say. Families really bow their heads today. Daddies really never go away. Tell me about the good